I saw an example of this literally today where, I got an email from someone saying, this person would love to be a guest on your podcast. They have a reach of 25,000 people. Okay. So I went and looked at their social media profiles and yeah, their Instagram had 20,000 followers on it. And then I started clicking on the posts and they would have 2 likes, 0 comments, 3 likes, 0 comments. So that 20,000 doesn't actually translate into impact in any way. On the other hand, there are people that I've worked with over the years that have very small mailing lists, that have very small social media reach, but the relationships that they have run deep. And those relationships translate to direct referrals for business, to relationship growth, to partnership opportunities. And those feel to me like they're much more soul aligned than some of these conventional metrics that we look at. Hello and welcome back to Pleasure and Profits. Last week, I shared an overview of the framework that I've developed called the Satisfaction Strategy, which I believe is not only a practical approach to building a soul-aligned and sustainable business, but it's the way forward in this emerging economy and in the current evolution of our culture that we're experiencing right now. This week, we're focusing on the first pillar, which is impact. And what I'll say to get us started is that my own experience of figuring out what aligned impact means for me has definitely been a process of evolution over a number of years. I could go back to one of my earliest jobs, probably the place where I really started to build the foundation for the career and the business that I have built over these last 20 some years. I can look back and see that the culture of that company was really focused on the impact that we were having on every single person we came into contact with. And it could be just that small, that you're doing a transaction at a cash register and you're having an impact on the person that you're interacting with. Not to mention the people that you work with, that you see every day and you spend time with every day. And I can trace a through line from that role through every substantial job that I've had in my career, through every iteration of my business, to having an understanding that the way I show up every day and the individual exchanges that I have with the people around me are part of the impact that I am here to make in the world. And there have been times where I've gotten off track, as we often do, where I got distracted by, seeing what other people were doing, comparing myself, by learning from people who had a very different perspective on what success looks like or what impact could be and should be, sort of holding up an example of impact that truly just wasn't aligned for me, but presenting it in a way as if like, this is the way, this is the thing that we're all going for. And I went off the rails more than once and had to rein myself back in and get myself back into alignment to really figure out and understand what is the impact I'm here to make and what's the absolute best way for me to do that. And a beautiful piece of insight that a coach and mentor that I've worked with the last few years, who was a guest last season on the podcast, Giovanni Marsico, he shared this example of the desire to impact 1,000,000 lives, which when you say that, when I say that, when I hear myself say that, it sounds massive. I want to impact 1,000,000 lives. Wow. How do you even wrap your head around that? And then he broke it down to this math: 1,000 times 1,000 equals 1,000,000. So if I can have a direct impact on 1,000 people, who then have a direct impact on 1,000 people, that's 1,000,000 lives impacted. And you could break down that math in any way that you want. Maybe you have an impact on 100 people who impact 10,000 people each. Maybe you're a person whose desire for impact is to have direct impact on 10,000 or 100,000 people who each have an impact on some other number of people. But our ability to impact exponentially is really profound. And figuring out what the right version of that is for us in order for us to feel satisfied and in order for us to build a business that is truly sustainable, that's a really key component of the satisfaction strategy. And so, as a reminder, the satisfaction strategy is based on creating a synergistic mix of impact, profitability, and pleasure. For purpose driven entrepreneurs, which I assume you are because you're listening to this, these are the three essential elements that create the foundation for a soul aligned and sustainable business. And when they're properly cultivated and when they're integrated, then they create unstoppable momentum in your business, in your life. And that's where true satisfaction lives. Now, we're starting with impact because I believe that if you're here listening to me right now, then it's a given that you're a person who has a desire to make the world better in some capacity, to improve people's lives, maybe improve animals' lives or life in general on the planet. But there's some calling inside of you to do good in the world and to do that good through your vocation, through your work in the world. And the dilemma for so many people like us for so many years has been the disconnect between the impact that we want to have in the world and how we believe or how we've been taught we have to go about creating it, how we have to go about doing that work. Because so many of the teachers and the leaders who have come before us don't have the same value system that we do. And it's not a slight on anyone. You know, that's what they learned how to do. And they learned from somebody else who learned how to do it that way. And so these ways of operating the world have just been passed down and passed down and passed down. And for many of us, they just feel out of integrity. They just feel out of alignment. And they just feel like they weren't made for us. And so we've learned all of these ways to work in the world, to market, to sell, to do business that often feel really out of integrity. And there are so many examples of people still teaching this stuff to this day. And if those methodologies resonate with you, then great. Then go do those things. And if they don't, just know that they're not the only way. So that's what we're here to talk about, because in so many cases, trying to adapt to that version of how to do things results for people like us in burnout and resistance and just like a full revulsion of like, well, I can't do it that way. So I guess I can't do this at all. Maybe feeling like we just don't fit into that world. Or I know I've had this experience myself. There have been seasons where I've looked around and thought, maybe I'm just not cut out for this because I see all these other people doing these things that I just cannot force myself to do. But I can't. It feels so out of integrity. I cannot make myself do that thing. And so maybe this just isn't for me. And if you're feeling that way, if you've ever felt that way, I just want to say you're not the only one. And that I believe wholeheartedly that that is inaccurate. That is a story that has been sold to us because it helps sell other people's products and programs. What I have seen to be true over and over again is that when you find the way that's aligned for you, A, it'll feel good. B, it won't feel overwhelming and exhausting and like you're trying to wedge yourself into some way of being that doesn't fit you. And it might not be easy, but it'll feel doable and it'll feel aligned and you'll be excited to go do it. You'll be excited to challenge yourself. And so what happens when we fall into those traps of thinking and we get lost in this world of burnout or resistance or feeling like we're just not good enough or we're just not cut out for this is that the impact that we're here to make then gets lost. And I believe that if you have the desire in you to have the impact, if you have the desire in you to be an entrepreneur, to have a business, that you absolutely then are 100% meant to do that. There is no world in which you have that desire and you can't have it and you can't do it. And if somebody would have you believe that, then I say they're wrong. So what's really exciting in this season that we're in right now is that things are changing and examples of how to do things differently are becoming more and more prevalent. Hustle culture is collapsing. We've talked about that. There is a rise for sure in sustainable and aligned approaches to business and entrepreneurship and to life in general. There's a growing awareness of a need for new paradigms, these new ways of seeing things, the new ways of approaching things. And this conversation is especially relevant right now. We're in this very beginning of this season, of this year, 2025, the year of the wood snake in the Chinese zodiac, that is about feminine wisdom and intuition and transformation and renewal. It's about power that is subtle and creates change through its subtlety. And this winter season, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, is a time for introspection and for planning and for building strong foundations, nourishing and rebuilding our resources. It's really a beautiful time for a strategic pause to stop and assess and really figure out what the path is to move forward. And moving forward into this era, it may not be seamless and it may take a long time, and both of those are very likely, but this rising of the divine feminine, that is our opportunity to put all of these principles into practice, to be an example, and to be the leaders through this transformation. So let's begin by really getting clear on what we mean by soul aligned impact versus conventional impact metrics. And so I gave the example of 1,000 times 1,000 equals a million, and how, even having impact on 10 people or 100 people can have ripple effects out into the world, all the people that then they impact through the work that you've done. And that's one example of where we can look at a number and say, oh, well, that seems impossible. But when we break it down, it actually seems very doable, doesn't it? So there are a lot of conventional metrics that are often used to measure how impactful a business is, an individual is. And what I think is really unfortunate about a lot of these traditional metrics is they don't take into account things like personal relationships, network, energetic influence. What's really interesting about that is that I have seen many, many times that those conventional metrics don't translate into actual impact. There are just countless examples I have seen over the years of people who have huge followings, but they have no engagement. Somebody else might only have 1 or 2,000 followers on Instagram, and they might actually be really engaged and have like a really brilliant client base that's actually helping them to generate more revenue than that 100,000 followers are. I saw an example of this literally today where, I got an email from someone saying, this person would love to be a guest on your podcast. And oh, they have a reach of 25,000 people. Okay. So I went and looked at their social media profiles, and yeah, their Instagram had 20,000 followers on it. I was like, wow, that's great. And then I started clicking on the posts, and they would have 2 likes, 0 comments, 3 likes, 0 comments. So that 20,000 doesn't mean anything, because that 20,000 doesn't actually translate into impact in any way. And that's just one example of a vanity metric that doesn't have any actual substantial meaning to it. On the other hand, there are people that I've worked with over the years that have very small mailing lists, that have very small social media reach, but the relationships that they have run deep, 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 deep. And those relationships translate to direct referrals for business, to relationship growth, to partnership opportunities, to tangential referrals. Like, I know someone who knows someone who knows someone. And those feel to me like they're much more soul aligned than some of these conventional metrics that we look at. And so when we're talking about soul aligned impact versus conventional impact metrics, what I encourage you to think about is, are the metrics that you're looking at ones that are really aligned for you? And what do they translate to in terms of the impact that you're able to have? Okay, so let's break down what I believe are 3 key levels of impact. The first one is direct impact. This is the immediate difference, the immediate impact that you have in your clients' lives. So the individual people that you interact with directly. And for some people, the desire is to have 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 direct clients that they work with at any given time. And it's a very intensive, personalized, really boutique experience. And for others, it might be hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that they're directly interacting with. Those are the people that you get face to face with, whether that's live and in person, or whether that is, on a Zoom call or some other online platform, some other way of working with people. So who are the people who are making a purchase from you, and how are you directly affecting them? If you are a therapist, that's going to be the clients that you see. If you are A graphic designer, that's going to be the individual people who hire you in order to rebrand their business and build, and design their new website for them. Those are examples of direct impact. Systemic impact is the second level, and that is about the ripple effects out into the communities and industries. And so, for example, if you're a copywriter, if you work in brand messaging, you might get hired and have a direct impact on an individual client. And then the ripple effect out in the community would be that because of their improved messaging and copy, they're able to reach more and more people with their work in the world. That is a systemic impact. That is a ripple effect that goes out in the world. Another example of systemic impact or ripple effect is the people on your team and how you support them, what the impact of them working for you has on their lives and then out to their families and their communities. So often we think about impact, we think about the individuals that we're serving or selling to, and we forget that our team is really part of who we're also here to impact, and they're part of our impact. So that is a symbiotic relationship where we have the ability to impact their lives, and they also have the ability to impact ours and influence the impact that we have on our customers and our clients as well. And then there's legacy impact, and that is the lasting transformation that you have in the world. And this can feel sometimes a little bit esoteric, a little bit abstract, and it can be abstract and it can feel very far away. And yet, if you think about the direct impact you're having and the systemic impact you're having, and you draw a line from that to what are the longer lasting effects of that out in the world, that might be your legacy, or it might be a piece of work or a piece of intellectual property, an idea, a message that you have that then influences other people in the long term. So I would love to use an example, not of my own work, but of someone who I believe has had a really huge impact on me. One of my mentors and teachers over the years has been a woman named Rochelle Sheik. She created a practice called Koya Inspired Movement that is really about connecting with the divine feminine and connecting with nature and learning to listen to ourselves through embodied movement and connecting with each other as well, connecting in community. I interviewed her back in season 1 as well. I think she was my first guest. When I think about her levels of impact on me and my life, and the residuals of that, the direct impact is truly her work changed my life in so many ways. And I joked with her that, she saved me tens of thousands of dollars in therapy, probably, and hundreds of hours of like talking about, all sorts of problems by just learning how to actually be in my body and feel them and process them. And that direct impact truly changed my life. And I can measure my life in many ways, and like before Koya Inspired Movement and after, and then occasions where I have attended a retreat and had a truly transformative experience. So there's like before that retreat and after that retreat, and how I really was personally transformed in those experiences. So those are very direct impacts. From a systemic impact, well, then I took all that I've learned from her, and it's become my way of being. It's become the influence in my work in the world. I became a Koya teacher. I taught it to many people. I do it one-on-one with my clients. I weave the principles that I've learned from her into so many things that I've done. So the ripple effects of that work are woven all the way through every single person that I've interacted with, probably since, my initial experiences with Koya in 2013. Everyone that I've interacted with has had some residual ripple effect from my learning and my work in that world. The impact of that is truly like a generation of women who have had the same experience that I've had, who then have incorporated it into their work, into their world, into their families, and into their businesses, and into their relationships with other women, into their relationships with the world. Like that is lasting transformation. That is all part of this rising of the divine feminine, being part of that movement. All comes from, Rochelle deciding to lead a class to help women learn how to be present and be in their bodies. That's a beautiful example of impact. And it didn't start by getting on stages in front of hundreds of thousands of people. It started with a small group of people, in I don't know if it was her living room or in a yoga studio, but it started with a handful of women like 15 years ago. And so when we're talking about impact and truly all things, but I think it's so critical to understand that when we're in alignment, when we're taking action from a place of alignment, that our capacity, our ability to influence things, to make change, and to really have lasting impact is so much more powerful than straight numbers. Being in alignment, connecting with the right people, the ripple effects that you can have from that are going to be so much more significant than if you're just chasing the numbers, if you're just trying to grow bigger and bigger at any cost. And often those numbers that we look at when we're talking about scale are really ego driven and not soul driven. So, how do you know if your impact mission is in alignment or out of alignment? Well, how does it feel? That would be the number one question is how does your impact mission feel? Does it feel alive and energizing and exciting? Or does it feel draining, exhausting? Are you holding it up next to what other people are accomplishing or doing and measuring against those things? That would be a really good indicator that maybe it's time to do some realignment around what your impact mission is. And the beautiful thing about this, like with all things, is that there is no right or wrong. There's only what's right for you or what's wrong for you. And figuring out what that impact mission is for yourself, that's gonna make you feel excited, that you can be energized around and show up every day and do your work knowing that you're on the path to have the impact that you wanna have and that it's not based on anybody else's metrics is going to be the thing that's most powerful to help you move forward. As I said, this season of winter, of introspection, of planning, of resourcing, this is a beautiful time to do this work, to just journal around like, what is the impact that I'm trying to have? Like, why is that the goal I have? I don't know who created this process, but like the 5 whys deep of like, but why is that my goal? Okay, answer that. But then why that? And then why? They keep going deeper with the why until you really get to the core of why your impact mission is what it is. And that'll help you figure out if it's the right one for you. I personally have found that learning and understanding my human design has been really helpful in connecting with my soul's purpose and really understanding if I'm on the path or not on the path. I was introduced to it over 7 years. I've gone deeper and deeper in order to be able to work with it with my clients to help them really to get a better understanding of what their soul's purpose is and how to assess whether or not they personally are in alignment with what they're here to do and what are the factors that are, ego, what are the factors that are learned behaviors, what are the things that they're doing because they're in their zone of excellence and not their zone of genius, and learning to trust your intuition in order to know if you're on your path or not. And sometimes it involves like going down the wrong path for a little while until you realize this isn't quite right and backing out and taking the next turn and figuring out the next pathway forward for yourself. So what are some common misconceptions and some blocks to creating impact? Well, one of them I've mentioned a handful of times, and that is the myth that bigger is always better. I believe that what's aligned for you is always better. And for some people, it is that big, big, big impact goal. And for other people, it's not. For other people, it's intimacy and connection and understanding the ripple effects. That is what really defines what is it aligned in terms of impact for them. Copying other people's impact strategies, looking around at what other people are doing and saying, oh, well, I guess I should be doing that too. I guess I should be going after that impact. While we're looking out there, we're not actually having the impact that we could be if we were just focused on our own game. Another one is the trap of creating impact without sustainability. And this I see a lot. There's such a level of devotion and commitment to helping out there that there's a neglect of the self. And if we're not taking care of ourselves in a way that's sustainable, and when I say ourselves, that also means our business, that means our infrastructure, that means our team, that means our revenue and our profitability. If we're not taking care of those things, then it becomes unsustainable, and then the impact can't happen that's meant to happen. And often in those circumstances, there's a choice being made between personal well-being and making a difference, as if it could only be one or the other, and that we can't be or do or have both of those things, which we absolutely can. Some other things that get in the way of creating impact in our businesses specifically are getting caught in the weeds of daily operations instead of focusing on what's your highest good. And I'll put in conjunction with this, getting caught in the story that you have to be doing all of the things instead of focusing on the one thing that could really move your business forward, that could really actually create impact. I think this happens so often. We're being inundated with all these messages of like, you have to be here and you have to be on Instagram, you have to be on LinkedIn, and you have to be email marketing, and you have to be doing a webinar, and you have to be building a digital funnel, and you need to build a speaking business, and you need to be networking, and you need to be doing all of these things. And getting caught in doing a little bit of all of those things and not doing any of them really well, instead of just picking one lane and focusing on it and going all in and allowing the impact from that one thing to manifest before you move on to the next thing. Similar to that is trying to serve everyone instead of focusing your energy. I see this often with entrepreneurs where they start with a passion, a goal, a vision for impact, and then it's like, okay, well, somebody is asking me for this other thing, so I guess I could do that. I should do that. Well, somebody else is asking me for this. It's easy to go like, oh, well, yeah, I can do that, and then go do that, instead of focusing on the one thing that is your lane, that is your zone of genius, and really focusing on the impact that you're here to create with that. Instead of getting distracted by all of the other things that you could potentially do for people. And really, I think, important example of this to share, that is sort of something I get a little fired up about. So apologies in advance if I do. Are entrepreneurs who set out to build a business doing something that's really, really, really important to them. And along the way, they start to learn all these entrepreneurial skills. They learn sales and marketing. They learn some business strategy. They learn all these things. And next thing you know, they have pitched their purpose-driven business out the window in order to teach sales and marketing and business strategy and, like, you name it, instead of the thing that is what their soul was aligned with. It's like, oh, this is easier to sell. This is easier to explain. I'm not emotionally attached to this thing. So I can go teach people how to do this. I can go support people with this, and I don't have to be vulnerable emotionally. But what's happening is you're not actually getting to have the impact that you were here to make, and you're doing somebody else's work. I get a little fired up about it because I see it all the time. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox about trying to serve everyone and getting out of your own lane. What's important there is focusing your energy on the thing that you know that you are here to do, the work that you're here to do, the impact that you're here to have. Another block to creating greater impact is not having the ability to get your message out in the world in a meaningful way. And so kind of just tying back to that, this idea of like, we're trying to be in all the places instead of focusing energy on one. And because of that disbursement, we don't really pick up traction anywhere. And so in order for you to have the impact that you want to have, you need to amplify that message, whether that's to 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people or whatever. Choosing the lane that you're going to amplify your message in and really focusing your energy on that and getting really good at that and showing up to those places and sharing that message. Neglecting to do that is a really common block to growing your impact. Another one is undervaluing your expertise and your contribution. And we're going to get into that in a big, big way over the next few weeks because this is such an important piece and something I see so often with heart-centered, purpose-driven individuals is not really understanding what it is that they're bringing to the table and then undervaluing. And of course, operating from depletion instead of overflow, not building something that's sustainable, not putting into place practices that are sustainable for ourselves can lead to us not being able to have the impact that we want to have in the world. And so it's been said a gazillion times, you have to fill your cup first. You have to put your oxygen mask on first. And you have to continue to do that day after day after day in order to be able to go out in the world and have the impact that you're desiring to have. And so, how do we go about creating sustainable systems to be able to create impact in the world? Number one is building foundations that support long term transformation and long term growth for you personally and also in your business. It's so easy for us to just sort of like skip ahead and want to just get there, get farther faster. But until we've built the foundations, what's going to keep happening is we get farther ahead and it's not sustainable and we fall back. We regroup and we go charging ahead again, but still it's not sustainable and we fall back. And so building those foundational systems for ourselves personally and for our businesses, the infrastructure are really important to be able to create sustainable impact over a long period of time. Really understanding the ripple effect that we talked about, that the impact isn't just about the people you touch directly, but it's about then who did they go out and impact in the world. This is a really important one, learning to balance immediate impact with long-term vision. We can often have this sort of push pull between opportunities to do something meaningful and impactful now that maybe aren't sustainable versus understanding that we may not talk to a million people today, but if we're building the foundational things that we might get to that longer term vision if we just show up and put one foot in front of the other and do the work for the long-term goal and being able to determine for yourself what's desirable and what's acceptable in terms of long-term versus short-term versus medium-term, that's really up to you. Again, there's no right answer. It really has to be about what's aligned for you. I certainly don't advocate for short-term suffering for long-term gain as a life or business strategy, but occasionally we have to say, I'm going to turn down that speaking engagement because I'm working on something very specific in my business right now and it's building a foundation and I'm not in the season to go out and amplify it yet. First, I need to build this foundation and then I'll go amplify it. And what can get tricky and challenging is opportunities might show up for us to reach a bigger audience, to do something higher impact. I was just having this conversation with a client recently. It's like, oh, I have this opportunity showing up. I want to go get it. And I had to remind them that they haven't built the infrastructure. And if they get that deal, that their life is going to become really chaotic, really fast. And so my encouragement always is to trust that you choose your path, you focus on the season you're in, you do the work that you're meant to be doing in this moment, and that opportunity will show back up. Or it will still be there. You're not losing an opportunity. What you're doing is choosing a path of sustainability instead of choosing a short-term win at the expense of your long-term sustainability. I believe 100% that creating sustainable systems means creating scalable systems. And so often that is the foundational work. It's documenting processes that somebody else could then step in and do. So you're not the person doing all the things. You're not the bottleneck. Often that is slowing down for periods of time to set up those systems so that you can eventually reach more people. That means developing your team to be able to take on more work so that you can focus on the things that are most important for you to be doing. We've talked about the need to get really clear on what you're measuring and why. And then going about measuring those things, really making it part of your process that you are measuring, you're looking at those metrics on an ongoing basis so that you can really understand in what ways you're making meaningful progress and where you might need to adjust. So I haven't said it explicitly, but there's an underlying message in all of these things that I've been talking about that profitability needs to be part of this, that you have to be profitable, that you need to understand your finances, that you need to be investing in long-term sustainable growth from a financial perspective in order to be able to continue to have the impact that you want to have and to grow into the greater impact that you want to have. That having financial stability, sustainability, and viability is a critical component to that. And we're going to get into that in a much deeper way for sure. And so, just for today, your ability to create and maintain a profitable business is going to allow for you to amplify your mission and invest in the systems that are going to help you to grow your impact. And underlying all of this as well is the essential message that this should all feel good, that you shouldn't be wedging yourself into somebody else's plan, that you need to be sustaining yourself through alignment practices and creating an experience that you can enjoy for a long time, that is sustainable from a personal life, pleasure, enjoyment experience, so that you can continue to have the impact that you want to have. And you're not, chasing retirement, chasing the weekend. And so all of this involves leaning into cycles of growth and regeneration, of focusing on foundation and then expanding, and then focusing on foundation and expanding. And those cycles are a really important part of how we're able to continue to create impact for a long time by not depleting ourselves when impact is properly cultivated. Some of the things that you'll experience that I think are what we're all desiring is levels of clarity and confidence in your ability to create that change in the world, and alignment with opportunities that just seem to show up that allow us to then go out and have that greater impact in the world, evidence of our impact out in the world that we can measure, and really a deep sense of purpose in our daily work. And when these pieces are integrated, when we've integrated our impact goals, our profitability, and our pleasure practices, and those three are really working synergistically together, then we just naturally attract aligned opportunities. Financial decisions begin to flow from possibility instead of scarcity. Growth starts to feel energizing instead of exhausting, and our impact expands exponentially. And so, as we wrap up for today, my invitation to you is to begin to reflect on and examine your current impact approach, to make the time to really assess what are your impact goals. Are they aligned for you? Are there elements of ego or vanity metrics or something that some other person told you should be looking at to measure the success of your business based on? Are those things aligned for you? Are you really focused on the impact that you want to make? And does that impact goal really feel good to you? Does it feel like a stretch without feeling like an impossible reach? And if it feels like it's so far away, if it feels like it's such a challenge, is there a way that you can break it down so that it feels doable and you can start taking the small steps to move forward in that direction, and really make a point of assessing for yourself, what are your three levels of impact? What's the direct impact that you desire to make? What's the systemic impact or the ripple effects that that work might then have in the world? And what is the legacy impact that you're really desiring to create in the world? What is the lasting transformation that you feel is your soul's work to do here in this lifetime? And in the next episode, we're really going to dive into the synergy of profit and pleasure, the other two key areas of the satisfaction strategy. I'm really looking forward to having that conversation with you as well. Until next time, remember, your pleasure is your power. Take care.